I know what you see when you look at that photo. You see a pair of denim shorts. You see a tank top. You see a girl walking down a street in Los Angeles. But when my father looks at that photo, he sees rebellion. He sees a daughter who has lost her way for my entire life. My worth was measured by the length of my skirt and the obedience in my voice. I was told that if I showed my knees, I was causing men to stumble. I was told that if I moved to a city like LA, I would lose my soul. But today, I'm taking back the narrative. Yes, I wear shorts now. Yes, I have short hair. And yes, my relationship with my family in Arkansas has changed forever because of it. But this isn't a story about clothes. It's a story about freedom. It's about how I went from being the rebel daughter to simply being free. Let's talk about what really happened when I left the big house behind. When I saw that photo of me walking down the street in LA, the one where I'm wearing denim shorts and a tank top, my first instinct was the old fear. My stomach dropped. I thought, oh no, what will they say in Arkansas? Even though I am a grown woman, a mother of two, and living thousands of miles away, that little girl inside me who was terrified of breaking the rules still flares up. But then I looked at the photo again, and you know what I saw? I saw a woman who looked comfortable. I saw a woman who wasn't overheating in a long denim skirt in 90-degree weather. I saw a woman who was just living her life. The media called it a rebellion. They ran headlines like Jinger Goes Hollywood and Jim Bob's Nightmare. It's funny how a piece of fabric can cause such a storm. To the world, it's just shorts. To my family, it's a symbol of defiance. It says, I do not accept your control anymore. And honestly, they are right. It is defiance, but it's not defiance against God. It's defiance against a system of control that told me my body was dangerous. That photo represents the end of Jinger, the Duggar girl, and the reality of Jinger, the woman. Moving to Los Angeles was never on my bingo card growing up. I was a girl from Tontatown, Arkansas. We were taught that cities like LA were full of sin, darkness, and people who hated God. When Jeremy and I first started talking about moving here for his seminary studies, I was terrified. I thought I was walking into the lion's den. But when we got here, everything changed. I remember driving down the Palm. Lined streets, seeing the diversity, seeing the creativity. I realized that the world wasn't as scary as I had been told. Moving here gave me the physical distance I needed to heal. In Arkansas, everyone looks the same, dresses the same, and thinks the same. Here, I could disappear, I could walk into a grocery store in pants and no one stared, no one whispered. That anonymity was a gift. That anonymity was a gift. It allowed me to ask questions I never could have asked at home. The Hollywood life that my dad warned me about, the shallow, godless place, has actually been the place where my faith has grown the deepest. Because for the first time, it's my faith, not my parents. Let's talk about the rules. The Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, the ministry my family followed, taught us that there was a strict code for everything. Hair, length, clothing, music, dating. We were told that these weren't just good ideas, they were God's laws. If you disobeyed, you weren't just a bad kid. You were outside of God's umbrella of protection. Deconstructing that was painful. It felt like peeling off my own skin. I had to go back to the Bible and actually read it for myself. Without Gothard's interpretation. And you know what I found? I couldn't find the verse that said women must wear skirts. I couldn't find the verse that said drums in music were evil. It was a shock. I realized that so much of my life had been controlled by men's preferences disguised as God's will. That realization made me angry at first. I felt lied to. But then it made me free. I realized that I could love Jesus and still wear Nikes. I could love Jesus and listen to Justin Bieber. The walls of the box I was raised and started to crumble, and for the first time, I could breathe. People always ask me about the pants. It sounds silly, right? It's just denim. But for me, buying my first pair of jeans was a spiritual milestone. Jeremy and I were shopping, and I remember walking into this store that sold high-end denim. I had been studying the Bible for months, wrestling with my convictions, and I had finally reached the conclusion that God didn't care about my hemline. I picked up a pair. They were expensive, like $300 expensive. In my childhood, we bought everything at thrift stores, so spending that much on forbidden clothing felt crazy. I went into the dressing room, my heart pounding. I pulled them on, buttoned them up, and looked in the mirror. I expected to feel shame. I expected to feel naked or exposed. But instead, I just felt normal. I looked at myself and thought, I am still Jinger. I still love Jesus. I am just wearing pants. Walking out of the store with that bag felt like I was carrying a secret weapon. It wasn't just about fashion. It was about trusting my own conscience over my father's rules. Of course, the hardest part wasn't buying the pants. It was wearing them in front of my family. There is a rumor that my dad screamed at me or disowned me on the spot. It wasn't that dramatic, which in some ways made it worse. It was the silence. When my parents first saw me in pants, the air just left the room. My dad didn't have to say anything. His fate said it all. It was a look of deep, crushing disappointment. In his eyes, I wasn't just changing my style. I was rejecting his authority. I was rejecting the umbrella of protection he had built over us. We had conversations, hard conversations, where he told me he was concerned for my soul. He truly believed that by dressing this way, I was inviting sin into my life. Hearing your father say he is worried you are losing your way is painful. I cried a lot. I wanted his approval. I had spent my whole life being the obedient one just to get that approval. But I realized that the cost of his approval was my own authenticity. I had to be willing to let him be disappointed in order to be free. There is a narrative online that I just swapped one controlling man for another, that I went from obeying Jim Bob to obeying Jeremy. I understand why people think that. I went from my father's house straight to my husband's house, but that's not what happened. Jeremy didn't tell me to wear pants. He didn't tell me to cut my hair. In fact, he was very careful not to tell me what to do. He knew I had been told what to do my entire life. Instead, he opened the Bible with me. He said, "Jinger, show me where it says this is wrong." He encouraged me to think. He challenged me to have an opinion. For the first time, I had a headship who wanted a partner, not a follower. He empowered me to make my own choices. When I decided to wear shorts, it was my decision. Jeremy supported it, yes, but he didn't mandate it. That distinction is everything. I am not under new management. I am finally managing myself. The biggest reason I am so firm on this new path is my daughters, Felicity and Evangeline, raising them in Los Angeles is the polar opposite of my childhood in Arkansas. My girls run. They climb trees, they play soccer, and they do it all in shorts and T-shirts. I never want them to feel the weight of modesty the way I did. I never want them to worry that their knees are sinful. I want them to worry about being kind, being brave, and loving God. When I look at them so free and unburdened, I know I made the right choice. If staying in the IBLP meant my daughters would grow up with the same anxiety and body shame I had, then leaving was the only option. I am breaking the cycle for them. They will grow up knowing that their bodies are strong and capable, not dangerous temptations. That freedom is the greatest gift I can give them. I think people underestimate the psychological toll of growing up in a high control environment. It wasn't just about rules. It was about fear, deep, paralyzing fear. As a child, I lived in constant terror of the rapture. I used to think that if I wore the wrong thing or thought the wrong thought, God would kill me. I thought I would be left behind. I viewed God as a cosmic police officer waiting for me to slip up. Even after I moved to LA, that anxiety would flare up. If we went to a movie theater, which was forbidden growing up, I would have panic attacks thinking the building was going to collapse on us as punishment. Unpacking that trauma has taken years of therapy and prayer. Learning that God is love, not fear, has been the hardest but most beautiful journey. I still have days where the old anxiety knocks on the door, but now I know how to lock it out. I am not ruled by fear anymore. When people say I've gone Hollywood, I just smile to myself. To some, it sounds like a criticism, like I've traded my values for the glitz and glamour of Los Angeles. But to me, this city isn't about fame. It's about the freedom to be anonymous. For the first time in my life, I can walk down a palm-lined street, grab a gourmet coffee, and just be a person in the crowd. I have friends here who are in the industry, and we go to art galleries and shopping districts that would have been completely off limits in my childhood. Many people think I've changed, but the truth is I've just found myself. I listen to modern music. I watch movies, and I live in a culture where I'm not being judged for every single hemline. This Hollywood life is my symbol of independence. It has taught me that I can be a woman of deep faith and still enjoy the modern world. It's not a rebellion. It's finally living. The hardest part of my journey was disentangling my faith from the legalistic rules of the IBLP. Growing up, I was taught that the rules were the faith. If I broke a rule, I was breaking God's heart. When I first started wearing pants or cutting my hair, the guilt was overwhelming. But as Jeremy and I sat down with the Bible, I realized that Jesus came to set us free, not to keep us in a cage of man-made regulations. I discovered that I could love Christ with all my heart and still wear Nikes. My faith isn't built on fear of policeman God anymore. It's built on the love of a father. Stepping out of the darkness of legalism made my relationship with God much more authentic and stronger than it ever was in Arkansas. There are always rumors swirling that I've been disowned or that my father won't speak to me. The reality is more complicated than a headline. We aren't officially no contact, but there is an invisible wall between us now. Ever since I published my book and started being open, about my deconstruction. The distance has grown. When I do speak with my dad, there is an underlying tension. He sees me as someone who has lost her way, while I see myself as someone who has finally found it. It was painful to realize that my father's approval was conditional on my obedience to his specific culture. I had to accept that being true to my conscience might mean being an outsider in my own family. It's a heavy price to pay for freedom, but I would pay it again every single time. My relationships with my sisters, Jana, Jessa, Jill, are all very different now. Jill is on a similar path of freedom, so we connect deeply. But for the sisters who are still living within the old rules, there is a divide that is hard to bridge. Sometimes when we video chat, it feels like we are living on two different planets. They talk about their lives in the IBLP culture, and I just can't relate to that world anymore. I know they probably judge me, and they might even be praying for me to return to the way I was raised. I love them, but I can't go back into that box. I hope that by seeing me happy and healthy in LA, they might eventually realize that there is a beautiful life waiting outside those strict boundaries. Writing my book. Becoming free indeed was the biggest risk of my life. I knew that by telling the truth about Gothard and the IBLP, I was essentially burning the bridge to my old life. I knew my parents would be hurt, and I knew the community I grew up in would see me as a traitor. But I didn't write it to be a rebel. I wrote it for the thousands of people who were raised in fear, just like I was. I wanted to show that you can walk away from a high control religion without losing your soul. Since the book came out, I've had so many women tell me that my story gave them the courage to find their own freedom. My voice isn't silenced anymore. I am finally able to tell my own truth, and that is worth all the criticism in the world. People might think it's just a haircut, but for me, cutting my hair short was one of the most symbolic things I've ever done. Growing up, we were taught that a woman's long hair was her glory and that it should never be cut short. It was another one of those rules designed to keep us in a very specific traditional box. When I decided to go for the bob, it wasn't just about fashion. It was about reclaiming my own body. I remember sitting in the chair in LA watching the inches fall to the floor and feeling lighter with every snip. It was my way of saying, I am not a project to be managed. I am a person. My hair doesn't define my devotion to God. No. When I look in the mirror, I don't see the compliant Duggar daughter. I see a woman who is confident, modern, and finally comfortable in her own skin. We have to talk about the elephant in the room. When the news about my older brother Josh broke, the trial, the horrific details, it was a breaking point for so many of us. For me, it was the final confirmation that the umbrella of protection we were raised under was a lie. How could a system that was so obsessed with the length of a girl's skirt fail so completely to protect the most vulnerable? Watching that unfold from California was heartbreaking. It made me realize that legalism doesn't make people safe. It just makes them good at hiding. That season of our family life was dark, but it pushed me even further toward the light of the true gospel. One based on grace and truth, not secrets and control. It made me even more determined to keep my own daughters far away from that culture of silence. There is culture of silence. There is a lot of speculation about how Jeremy and I afford our life in Los Angeles. In my childhood, our finances were completely tied to the family brand and my father's decisions. We didn't own anything. Everything belonged to the empire. One of the greatest joys of our life now is our financial independence. We work hard. We have our podcast, my book, and our brand partnerships. Every dollar we earn is ours. No one is telling us how to spend it or taking a cut of our labor. Being able to provide for Felicity and Evangeline on our own terms is incredibly empowering. We aren't beholden to a TV contract or a family trust. That financial freedom is a huge part of our overall freedom. It means we don't have to keep quiet to keep a paycheck. We are free to speak our truth because we are the ones in control of our future. Living in the public eye, I mean, everyone has an inner deconstruction. I get comments every day from people who say I have become too worldly or that I've abandoned my roots. And my roots, the other side. I get comments from people who say I haven't gone far enough because I'm still a Christian. I've learned that I can't live for the comments section. If I tried to please everyone, I'd be right back in the same cage I escaped from. My journey isn't for public consumption. It's for my own soul. I'm not too Hollywood for God, and I'm not too Christian for LA. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. I've developed a thick skin over the years. I know who I am, and I know who I belong to. The opinions of strangers don't hold weight compared to the peace I feel in my home every night. Do I miss Arkansas? People ask me that all the time. The truth is, I miss the people, but I don't miss the place. I miss the big Sunday lunches. I miss the chaos of 20 siblings in one room. I miss the late night talks in the girls' bedroom. but I don't miss the wait. I don't miss the feeling of constantly being watched. Arkansas represents my childhood, but Los Angeles represents my adulthood. When I go back to visit, it feels like I'm stepping into a time capsule. I see the familiar roads and the big house, and a part of me feels nostalgic. But then I get back on that plane to LA, and as soon as I see the Hollywood sign, I feel like I can breathe again. You can love where you came from while being incredibly thankful you aren't there anymore. I have 18 siblings, and each one of them is on their own journey. Some are still deep in the culture we were raised in. Some are starting to ask questions. My greatest hope for them isn't necessarily that they move to LA or wear shorts. My hope is that they find the freedom to think for themselves. I want them to know that God's love is bigger than a list of rules. I want them to know that they don't have to live in fear. I try to lead by example, to show them that you can leave the IBLP and not only survive but thrive. I want my sisters to know they have a voice. I want my brothers to know they don't have to be perfect. If my life can be a light that shows them the way out of the darkness of legalism, then every struggle I've faced has been worth it. To wrap this up, I just want to say thank you for following my journey. It hasn't been easy. There have been tears. There has been family tension. And there has been a lot of unlearning. But standing here today in my favorite pair of shorts with my short hair and my beautiful free daughters, I wouldn't change a thing. I am not the rebel daughter. I am a woman who found the truth. I am not lost. I am finally found. Freedom isn't just about what you wear. It's about whose voice you listen to. I've stopped listening to the voices of men who wanted to control me, and I've started listening to the voice of the one who created me. My name is Jinger Duggar Vuolo, and for the first time in my life, I am free indeed. Bye, guys.